some steps, but that is our first look. Hey everyone, well, we're working on these big cherry slabs here. Got them out on the bench, and I'm noticing what could be a fatal flaw here. It could be a big problem for us. It looks to me to be some kind of ring shake. I don't know how well you can see that, but the outside edge here, it's cracked all the way through this layer between the sapwood and the heartwood. And I believe this is ring shake. I believe this is caused by some kind of event, some kind of traumatic event, whether it be lack of moisture or something in that tree's life. And or maybe, you know, maybe it had died or something like that and still left standing for a few years. But I don't know. If you know what that is, let me know. I think it's some kind of ring shake, but and these are really, really twisted. I mean, they've got to be 3 or 4 inches out. They are just really, really twisted up. So this is part of the fun. We're gonna get to try and turn these two, try and book match these in a way, but we're gonna have to do some serious work to get them flat to make a table out of this. So at this point, we have begun milling down our big slabs of cherry. They are essentially in manageable strips now. And this is all to get this whole thing to come together flat. So I've labeled the ends there so I can put them back together the way they go. But at this point, we're minimizing the problem. We got all that twist going on with those boards. I mean, even this one board, I don't know how well this will come out, but it is seriously twisted. So the way to deal with this is to break the problem down as best you can. Twisted board like that slab, a lot of times the best thing to do will be to cross cut it in half, just to, you know, get the twist out of the individual halves. But in our case, these slabs are so priceless, they're so big for being cherry and so wide and so long that we want to kind of max out whatever we can get lengthwise. I can't really justify cutting these in half. So that being said, we're going to minimize of our twist by taking these strips, and we're going to hand plane them down one side of each of them to get as flat as we can, and then we're going to thickness plane it with our planer over there, and that should get us some flatter material, and we can start gluing them back together and make some sense of all this. So all part of the process. Well, it's a new day here in the shop. So I finished off last night with getting these slabs back together, essentially. They're not glued. They're not glued and clamped yet. Still have some work to do to the edges, but you can see they are flat. So where we started with two very, very twisted big slabs, these are going to go back together and become flat. Two big flat slabs. And I've got quite a bit of work to do left to the edges. I'm definitely not happy with how my not good setup is working for these larger pieces like this. I've been dealing with this for years. And, you know, it'd be nice if I could just go and down to the corner store and buy myself a nice joiner, but unfortunately we're using Dad's old joiner. This is a 4-inch, basically a bench top joiner that should be used for small things, cabinet stuff, 3/4 inch material, and I'm using it to hog out, you know, 2-inch thick slabs of cherry. There's my pile there. But what these things are really good for is creating a really, really nice glue edge. And as you can see, we're just not getting it. I think the boards they're a bit too long. They're still a bit twisted. So really not allowing me to get nice glue edges, and the last thing I want is to see these, you know, unsightly glue edges. The other thing I'm dealing with is there's a lot of chip out with this cherry, which is what happens when you're running it through that machine and it wants to dig into the edge and chip it out. And it just happens because of where the grain is running in or running out. And ideally, you're able to joint these with the grain, and that prevents that. But this cherry is so all over the place that in one spot you've got the grain running one way, and at the other end the grain's running the other way. So no matter what, you're gonna get this stuff going on. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's just those blades are, you know, they're not the best quality blades either. I should really have a helical head joiner, you know, yada yada yada. You just got to work with what you got. What I'm gonna do is consult old David Copperfield over here, and I think I'm gonna do my edge work on this belt sander. And I would do it on the planer here. It's got a nice helical head, but it does not go to the thickness I need to run those on edge. So we can only really get about 5 inches, and most of these are closer to 6. So we're gonna run it on the wide belt, and that should give us a really, really, really good glue edge. But I've never done it before, so what's the worst that could happen? Well, our edges are way, way, way better running this through the wide belt sander. That really, not only did it take care of that chipping, but I really wasn't able to get real flat edges with my little joiner setup over here. So very happy with that. Let's put them together. Also, I should point out, this live edge, of course, did not go through the wide belt. The live edges you have to treat differently, of course. So that's one of the challenges with the live edge. I think we got it. I think we got it. We are ready to glue up. So I'm going to use some alignment biscuits to glue these together, to glue all these pieces together. And so at this point, I like to figure out how long I'm going to make this. Now, typically I'm doing a commission, so usually the dimensions are determined by whatever the design is determined. But in this case, we're just building this to the material. So whatever width we wind up with, I know it's going to be somewhere around 3.5 feet, 40 inches or so. And then lengthwise, you know, not a lot of people have use for anything longer than 8 feet. So, and with some serious damage right here going on, I don't really feel like pouring a whole bunch of epoxy to make this look good. It's never good to have these kind of cracks across the grain. I mean, that's just waiting to fail. So I'll probably end up cutting this piece down somewhere in here. This end looks pretty good. We've got some chip out. Some stuff that needs to go away. So, you know, we'll cut this a few inches, and this being cut here will determine how long this half of the top is. Of course, it's got its own kind of issues down at this end. So there was just wane out going on, and then we still got a little bit of twist on at least this board here, but once this is glued up, we'll flatten it as one. And then I don't really like to try and force the wood to do things, because that could just kind of come back to bite you later. I would rather glue it up in its current form with a little bit of twist and a little bit of unevenness, and then flatten it after that. I think that's going to be our best bet to keep it nice and stable throughout its lifetime. So that's what we're doing. And then look at that. I don't know if you can even see it. Got snow. We got snow coming down. Look at that. It's gonna be a nice snowy day. About time. So, in typical glue up fashion, I've got 20 minutes to be at a meeting. This is just how it goes sometimes. But I think that's just enough time to get this one half glued up. Then I'll go to my meeting, go have some lunch, let the dog out, as they say. And come back and glue the other one up. Okay, well, none of that recorded. But I've got this mostly clamped up. All I was saying is that we're going to use a combination of top and bottom clamps to make sure this stays flat. So the bottom clamps will exert a force that pushes down in the middle if you have a bow, because the bottom clamps will cause the whole thing to bow. So together, this force and this force are going to allow you to keep it flat, but also if you need to move it one direction or the other, use the force of the clamps on bottom or top to move the top one way or the other. I hope that makes sense. So I skipped forward a little bit just to save you guys some of the most boring stuff, mainly running the underside of both these slabs through the wide belt sander. Once I took it out of the clamps and cleaned them up and had a nice flat bench to test them on, I realized they still had a little bit of twist to them. There were some imperfections. If I were to start sending them through a planer, we're just gonna kind of keep that twist going and translate it to the other surface, basically. So I went ahead and ran the bottom side of these two through the wide belt a whole bunch of times and got them really, really, really flat. And so now they'll be ready to run through the thickness planer. Hey y'all, I ran out of space on my recording device yesterday, so you missed some steps, but needless to say, we got the whole thing glued up at the end of the day yesterday, and it's been sitting in the clamps all night, and it's looking pretty great, pretty flat, pretty happy with everything. It was about the best big piece glue up I've ever had. You know, I had these two big pieces, and in the past I've had issues with getting this last seam to really come together nicely, and when you got two big pieces like that, it becomes infinitely more complicated to get a nice long flat edge that, you know, runs the whole length of the table. But with our method of running everything through the wide belt, running all our individual parts through the wide belt, that worked out really well. This thing came right together, and you can really hardly see any of the seams from the glue ups. So really it's looking like two big cherry slabs, which is really what I was hoping for, to kind of preserve the integrity of that look of what they actually are and how kind of priceless this material is. So all right, so where we left off, I got a little bit of this metal cut out, this main X brace for the table base, and it wasn't too complicated. It's pretty straightforward. I have a computer program, so it can kind of tell me what all these angles need to be and what cuts I need to make. And the other four parts are going to be a little more complicated. You can kind of see on here, if I spin this around, you can see these different lines, marks, and the angles, the corresponding angles. So with that program, I can essentially just mock everything up on my blanks here, and then I'll just mark it on my steel pieces and cut everything out with the angle grinder, and everything should come together right there in the middle. Let's cross our fingers on that, huh? some tack welds. So this is what we got going on. We got half our base welded up. It's rough, but we're gonna weld arms sticking out right there, and we're gonna weld our legs down here. So I haven't totally cleaned it up yet, but I've built this little frame here to hold this up so I can start attaching the legs and the other arms. I'm just calling the legs and the arms. But this thing's huge. This thing is, it's big. It's big. It's not too big, but it's big. So, all right, we'll try and get this welded up and get it stable to where it can not be so sketchy. Relying on these quick clamps to hold all this weight, so stay tuned. All right, well, got pretty well tacked. Just some slug welds there, so not finished up with that yet, but we're gonna see if it stands up on its own. I wanna kind of start setting up the other arms just to make sure there's no interference here and make sure everything gets kind of welded together. So I just wanted to get these held so that this whole thing stays open or stays up, so that I can move my frame forward, slide it over here, and then I'll mount my arms to that and get those welded up. It's just what we're doing. Moment of truth. Make sure all of your limbs are out of the way. First clamp. Statements. Wouldn't put any weight on it yet. I always underestimate these welds. Being a woodworker, it's amazing to me how you can just glue stuff together and it's strong instantly. All right. You'll see different heights though. Which means I'll just have some grinding to do. This don't look right. You know, a wise man once said, if you can lift half of it, you can move it. Who said that? Might have been me. But I wouldn't say moving heavy stuff by yourself is wise. Touchdown. All right, well, first looks are good. It's not centered or anything like that. I just kind of threw it on there. But I like it. It could be a dining room table. Honestly, it's kind of a conference table size. But that is our first look at it. I think it looks pretty awesome. Got some work to do. That's all you Festool bros out there. All right, so slight change of plan. Last time we were here, we were talking about clearing out these voids and doing epoxy, black epoxy in all the voids, which is pretty typical, pretty common for what I do. But I decided to change it up a little bit. Some of these voids kind of have some certain characteristics that I'm not too excited about here. So that one in particular, I don't think it's going to look too great as a big old patch of black. So these other ones, you know, these will look fine once they're filled. So I am going to do a wood patch right in the middle of this table. And because I'm doing one, and it's obvious, I mean, it's going to be pretty obvious that it's a wood patch, but that's okay. I think I might do another one here. It's almost too small to do one, but I might do one there too, just so I can have some symmetry with the patches. So right now it's got a layer of finish on it, and that will protect the surrounding grain. Once we do the black epoxy, it won't dye the surrounding grain. And then also the edges have been treated. My good helper Kennedy was in here, and she went ahead and debarked our slabs here, as well as went at them with the angle grinder and some different bits. So it's really coming along good. I hope these wood patches look good, and this should be a fun little process to watch. Now, we're gonna put some supports into this top. Install 3 of these C channels. That's a C channel looks like. It's got slots in it. And let's stay pretty close to the end. These are all gonna get cut and routed in. These 3 spots. And I'll measure them out. Make sure they're in really good spots. So that's our next step. Route all this stuff out. All of those pencil mark spots. So we'll take a 1/4 inch out of everything with the router, and that'll flush our base out really nicely. And then these, we'll probably go ahead and cut the ends off, or rather cut miters on these ends here, and we'll use the circular saw. We'll cut 2 grooves, the width of this C channel, 2 grooves with the circular saw, and then we'll route out the overall shape of it, and we'll recess this whole thing into the top, and we'll probably, flatten the top with clamps before we do that. And we'll install these, and then this thing will stay flat forever. you.